All right, so I'd like to go over a couple points about slope. So if we have a line that has zero slope, it is always going to look exactly horizontal. So if we had a graph like this is our x, our y axis, and if we had a line that had a zero slope, if we were asked to draw a line that has a zero slope, it would be perfectly flat. So it would be exactly flat like that. So this line has a slope of 0. This line has a slope of 0. This line has a slope of 0. All right? So they need to be perfectly flat. All of these have slopes of 0 on them. They are completely flat, okay? Now if lines go vertically, then we call them as having slopes that are undefined. Undefined. So it doesn't even really make sense to talk about them having a slope. Here we have a graph, x and y, and here we have a line that's completely vertical, okay? This line right here is said to have an undefined slope. Because while having a horizontal line would have a 0 slope because it's perfectly flat, here it doesn't even make sense to talk about a slope. If you were to ski off of this, it would be a cliff. You would be dropping off. You would have to parachute. So it doesn't even make sense to talk about slope in this case with a vertical line. It's just a cliff, so we call it an undefined slope. If you were to find a slope algebraically using the slope formula, let's say this point right here was 3 comma negative 5. And let's say this point right here was 3 comma 2. We would use our slope formula. M, slope, is y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. Let's call this point 1, P1, and let's call this point 2, P2. So we're going to subtract our y values, okay? P1, so this is y1, so it's going to be 2 minus y2, which is negative 5, 2 minus negative 5, over the x of P1, which is 3, minus the x of P2, which is 3. 2 minus negative 5 is the same thing as 2 plus a positive 5, so that's 7 over 0. 7 over 0 is what we get. You cannot divide by 0. Therefore, because you would get an error if you ever try to divide by 0, you need to call this undefined. Therefore, this is not a correct answer. To say that the slope is 7 over 0 or 7 zeroths does not make sense. You cannot say that this is your answer. If you ever get this, you have to actually write out the word undefined and say that is an undefined slope. That would be a correct answer. Okay, so that covers 0 slopes and undefined situations. Okay, now moving on, the slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is our y equals mx plus b, where m is the movement or the slope. We use m to designate movement. That's why we use an m. And m means slope. And here b, this is the y-intercept. So this value is where a line would cross the y-axis or the vertical axis. So for instance, if this is a line, this point right here would be the intercept between the vertical axis and the line. So this right here would be our 0 comma b. B being whatever value of y is here. Let's say it's 1, 2, 3. So this b here would be 0 comma 3. All right? So let's say the slope here is negative 1/2. If we were to write a equation of this line, it would be y equals, instead of m, let's put negative 1/2 x plus b. B is the y value of the y-intercept. Here is at 3. And so this is the full equation in y equals mx plus b form. The reason why we call y equals mx plus b form the slope-intercept form, there are a lot of forms of lines that we could have. This form of a line is called the slope-intercept form. It's called the slope-intercept form because the slope and the intercept, the y-intercept, are very readily seen in this format. So that's why we call y equals mx plus b, this format, the slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form always has to be in y equals mx plus b form. It has to be in exactly that form or it is not considered slope-intercept form. For instance, if we had 3y equals 9x plus 12, this kind of looks like y equals mx plus b form, but it's not quite. Why? Because we need to have just y here. Here, it's 3y. So we need to make sure that y is isolated completely by itself. How do we do that? Divide everything, every term by 3. So now we get y equals 3x plus 12 divided by 3 is 4. Now we have put it into correct y equals mx plus b form or slope-intercept form. Thanks.